Hello, everybody. I thought I would give you a brief preview of one of the techniques that I'm going to teach on my approaching mini course on predicting relationships in marriage. This mini course starts on the 12th of November and will run 4 consecutive weeks, maybe even a fifth one, dependent upon how quickly we get through the material, until December 10th or the 17th. If you miss a class or so, because I know it's the holiday season, there's no worries because each class will be recorded and you'll get to catch up with the recordings, right? And so on this course, we'll learn how to predict relationship potential, learn about the difference between the Saptamsha and the Navamsha. We'll also learn how to predict the meeting of a key relationship partner, and we'll also learn how to predict marriage. Now, the technique that I'm going to teach you today is a technique that can save you a lot of time and effort, especially as it comes to marriage, because what this technique will do is let you see the potential for an individual to even get married. Okay, so why go looking through tons of periods in an individual's life to see if when they're going to get married, if there's not really a potential for the individual to get married? Now, this technique itself is from the Jaimini School of Astrology, but this is just to show you the potential. You can still go use Vimshottari Dasha in order to predict the actual date of the marriage if there is a potential for it. You don't have to use Jaimini techniques. If you know Jaimini, you can use Jaimini techniques too. And basically, it involves using Rashi aspects and something called the Upapada. So in order to teach this technique, for those of you who may not know much or anything about Rashi aspects, and equally may not know anything about padas, I have to give you a bit of a course tutorial in both of those factors. Okay? So let's get down to doing that. So basically, Rashi aspects. Let's touch on Rashi aspects first, and we'll keep it brief. Basically, the way Rashi aspects work are that all movable, also known as cardinal Rashis, will Rashi aspect all of the fixed Rashis except the one right next to it. Okay? I'll point that out here in a moment. All of the fixed Rashis will aspect all the movable / cardinal Rashis except the one right next to it. And all of the dual Rashis will aspect all the other dual Rashis, and there's not going to be one next to it because the dual Rashis, if you look at a South Indian chart, are all in the corners. So those are different. That's why South Indian, at least in my opinion, is best for doing Jaimini techniques. You can do it with North Indian too, if that's what you're most comfortable with. So let's give an example. So Aries here is obviously a movable Rashi, also known as cardinal for some of you who don't know the movable term. So Aries will aspect all the other fixed Rashis, meaning Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo, but it won't aspect Taurus. Cancer will aspect Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio, but not Leo. Libra will aspect Taurus, Leo, and Aquarius, but not Scorpio. And just briefly, Taurus would aspect Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, but not Aries. Okay, so the movable Rashis aspect the fixed. The fixed Rashis aspect the movable. And the dual Rashis aspect all the other dual Rashis. Okay, that's how that works. I have the North Indian up over here for those of you who are more familiar with that. But please pardon me for the sake of expediency. I'm not going to go into giving the illustration on that side because we have to cover a lot in a really short period of time. So let's touch next on padas or the upapada. Well, first of all, the upapada is something called the pada for the 10th house. Now, I use house cusps. Some of you may use equal house, and you can use either to do this technique. I find house cusps tend to be a bit more precise. So if you work with house cusps, you would want to use the 10th house cusp to find the upapada. If you work with equal house, you would want to use the 10th equal house to find the upapada. So how do you find a pada in general? Okay, well, let's find the upapada for this chart that we're looking at the moment. Okay, So basically, the 10th cusp is in Libra. The Lord of Libra is Venus. So what we want to do is we want to find the position of the Lord from the Rashi that's holding the 10th. So in this particular instance, Venus rules Libra, and Venus is in the second from Libra. So that means we would count from the second from Venus to find the Upapada, which would make it Sagittarius. Okay, so you go as many Rashis as the Lord is from the Rashi itself. So in other words, the 10th cusp, the Lord of the 10th is in Scorpio, and that's the second from the 10th, and that would we would count the second from Venus again, which is Sagittarius. So let's say you're working with equal house and you're not using house cusps. Then what you would do is you would take a look at where the 10th equal house is, and that would be Virgo. And the Lord of Virgo is in Sagittarius, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 from basically the 10th. Okay, now there is a special rule as per Jayamini, right? Which is if that particular Lord is in either the 4th or the 10th from the Rashi you're counting from, then you want to put the Upapada in the 4th. So in this particular instance, the Upapada would again be in Sagittarius, interestingly enough. Okay? Now let's say, for instance, that Lord happened to be, let's say Mercury happened to be in Gemini, even though it's not, right? Then you would not count the 4th from Mercury, you'd count the 4th from the 10th, and it would still be in Sagittarius. Okay? So if the planet is in the 4th from the 10th, or the 10th from the 10th, it goes in the 4th from the 10th house. Okay? And there's another technique like that too. Let's say we happen to have Mercury here in Virgo, okay? Which is obviously the same sign. That's the 10th. So let's say the 10th was right here, and you had Mercury in Virgo. Well, the Upapada is not going to stay in Virgo. In that instance, it would go in the 10th from Virgo, which would be Gemini. Okay? Let's say Mercury happened to be in Pisces, which is the 7th from Virgo. Well, the Upapada is not going to be in Virgo, the 7th from Virgo, because the idea is it's not going to be in the 1st or the 7th. So if Mercury happened to be in the 7th, it would go in the 10th from the 10th. And again, it would go into Gemini. So basically, the one difference to the rule is if you have the planet in the 4th from the 10th, then it stays in the 4th. If you have the planet in the 10th from the 10th, it goes in the 4th. If you have the planet in the 1st from the 10th, it goes in the 10th. If you have the planet in the 7th from the 10th, it goes in the 10th. Everything else, you just count the same house, like we did with Venus. So we were saying the 10th cusp is here, and Venus is in the 2nd from the 10th. So that would put the Upapada here. Okay, so you can find the pada for any house this way, but this is how you find the Upapada, which is the pada for the 10th. Okay, so what this technique does is we take that Upapada and we want to look at that Upapada and find the 7th from that Upapada. Okay, I hope you're still with me. I know it's a bit confusing, but I'll have more time to elaborate on the course. So if you're interested, I'd really recommend joining the course because I can go more into detail and make sure everybody's got it. But this is just a video. So basically, the 7th from the Upapada is what we're looking for. And with that 7th from the Upapada, we want to see who is Rashi aspecting. Okay? If there are more cruel, also known as malefic, influences to that 7th from the Upapada, that makes relationships very difficult for the individual. So you want to kind of count in the balance. If you've got more benefic aspects than you do malefic aspects, right? Then, there's stronger potential for marriage. If you have more malefic aspects than you do benefic aspects, then there's weaker potential. If you have only malefic aspects, the individual is probably not going to get married. And in addition to that, for this particular technique, you want to count the waning moon as a malefic. Okay, so the waning moon you'd count as a malefic in this particular instance. All right. So basically, let's look at this chart. So this is, and I picked 4 spiritual teachers to look at this because they are generally renowned for not getting married. So basically what we do is we use the Rashi chart first, and we look at the 7th from the Upapada. Now we remember that position as being Gemini. Then we go to the Saptamsha, okay? And we keep Gemini. We don't use a different Upapada. We keep the same Upapada that we had from the Rashi chart. So we would look at Gemini again. And I'll take you through this and point it all out to you. And after you've done the Rashi and the Saptamsha, you want to go into the Shastyamsha as well if you have a rectified birth time. Only thing is, when you go into the Shastyamsha, you want to find a new Upapada to count from. Okay, so in this instance, the 10th cusp is in Taurus, Venus is in that house. We remember if the planet happens to be in the same house as the 10th cusp, we go to the 10th. So that would put the Upapada in Aquarius. The 7th from that is Leo. So let's look at this potential, right? So let's go back to the Rashi chart. And for those of you who are more acquainted with North Indian, you can follow over here. Please pardon me, I'm just going to stick to one chart, but I know that everybody is accustomed to, that a lot of people are accustomed to North Indian, so I wanted to accommodate. And I'll accommodate on the course too, to make it easy for everybody. Okay, so when we look at the Rashi chart, we remember that the Upapada is in Sagittarius. And we remember with that Upapada in Sagittarius, that's going to place the 7th from the Upapada in Gemini. Okay, so what we want to do, I'm going to bring this up on the screen just to make it easy for everybody to see it. We want to look at the dignity of these planets. With Jaimini, it's the dignity that's important. We don't really look at Baladi Avastas or Jagradati Avastas. We just look at the dignity, right? So the 7th from the Upapada has Saturn in it. It also has a waxing moon influencing it. It's got Mars, which is a cruel planet. It's got the sun, which is considered a cruel planet too, although not as bad when it comes to the sun. And we have Mercury. So we have 3 cruel factors, and we have 2 gentle factors, or Somya factors, or benefic, however you like to call it. So it's fairly even here, right? So it's like 2 to 3. So you can even keep a tally. So we'll remember 2 to 3. Then we'll go into the Saptamsha chart. And we'll look at Gemini again. And so we're looking at Jupiter here. Jupiter being a gentle planet, that will bring it up to 3 so far. The moon being a gentle planet, that would bring it up to 4 to 3 so far. And then we look at Sun, Mars, and Saturn. That brings it to about 4 to 6. Okay, so we'll remember that. 4 gentle, 6 cruel. Then we go and we look at the Shastyamsha chart. Now, if it's kind of balanced out or really close, and 4 to 6 is pretty close, then the Shastyamsha can quite often be the deciding factor, right? So that's important to remember because the Shastyamsha sets the ceiling for everything else. So when we look at this 10th cusp here, we see Venus is there, and so the Upapada is going to be basically in the 10th, which is Aquarius, and the 7th from Aquarius is Leo. So we'll see who's Rashi aspecting. Well, we have Capricorn, we also have Libra, so we have the Sun in Rahu in Libra, and we also have Ketu Rashi aspecting from there. So that kind of makes it 4 to 9, but you still have a pretty strong potential. And interestingly enough, Satchidananda did get married. So this is one of the potentials that did get married, right? So we're seeing it's kind of, you have a lot of gentle planets, so it makes for a potential for marriage to be there. Let's look at another one of somebody who didn't get married, okay? Let's go to Yogananda's chart. And so the 10th cusp in Yogananda's chart is in Taurus. So we want to find out where Venus is. Venus is in the 8th from Taurus. Sorry, let me go to the north-south screen. I keep forgetting to do that. Venus is in the 8th from Taurus, so we count the 8th from Venus, which is Cancer. So we look at the influences to Cancer. You've got Rahu influencing and Ketu influencing. No gentle planets there, only cruel planets. Okay, so let's look at Cancer in the Saptamsha chart. Cancer in the Saptamsha chart has Jupiter in it. Okay, and Jupiter is influenced by, and that's an exalted Jupiter. Jupiter's influenced by Mars and Mercury. Okay, so we have 3 harsh planets, 2 gentle planets. All right, so it's kind of even. It's half and half. We need to look at the Shastyamsha again. So the 10th cusp in the Shastyamsha is Scorpio. And we'll find Mars is in the 5th from Scorpio. So we count the 5th from Mars. That would put the Upapada in Cancer. 7th from that is Capricorn. Okay, so with the 7th being Capricorn, then we want to look at the influences to that. And so we have basically the Sun is influencing the, Sun is influencing Capricorn. Saturn's influencing Capricorn, and this is a waning moon influencing, right? So the Shastyamsha sets the ceiling. And so you only have 1 gentle planet here. It's overwhelmingly pretty strong. Now that's a strong sun rather than a weak sun. But this is also, when it boils down to it, this is also a difficult Saturn because it's in a great enemy sign here, okay? So basically, that's a bad Saturn, and this is a strong Sun. So they kind of contradict each other. And so the balance is stronger towards making it so that the individual doesn't get married. Now, sometimes, I will admit, sometimes it's half and half. It's not going to conclusively tell you every time. But when it does conclusively tell you, it makes it a lot easier. Okay? So for those of you who are looking at this and you go and look at your own chart, don't. Okay, so it takes learning the techniques to know how to kind of balance it. You've learned the first step in the techniques, but you need a little bit of practice in doing that. And the reason I say don't do it is because just because you may have half and half, and the Shastyamsha tends to make the decision that it's more overwhelmingly in the favor of you not getting married, it doesn't mean there's not a potential. So even in this particular instance, I would be going and looking for the potential, right? And chances are, if we did that, we would find that there wasn't any potential periods that it was going to happen anyway. Okay, so that ends up making it easier for you in the long run. But this is a first step to the process, because if you happen to see only cruel planets, which is rare, I admit, then you're going to find that the individual will not get married. Or if you have 1 or 2 gentle planets and all the rest of them are cruel, then the individual is likely not going to get married. If it's like, almost even with maybe 1 or 2 less gentle planets and a lot of cruel planets, but maybe 1 or 2 cruel planets more, then you're going to find that relationships are hard for the individual, but there's a potential for them to get married. Now, if you have overwhelmingly gentle planets Rashi aspecting, then the individual is, stands a strong potential of getting married. Then you just have to find the period when it's going to happen. Okay, so this is just a brief technique. I will elucidate more on this particular technique on the course for those of you who are attending. And if you'd like to register, you should be able to find a link at the end of this video. Registration for the course is $129, and it starts this coming Sunday. And you can find out what time the course will be on Sundays by going to the registration page and then finding that particular time in your time zone. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Take care.